Now tonight, this should be an incredible moment. We're going to be talking with James Casbolt about why he was part of a genetic enhancement and mind control program. So stand by, that's next on Coast to Coast AM. James Casbolt was part of a genetic enhancement mind control program at the AL 499 underground base in Berkshire, as well as connected underground facilities in the United Kingdom. Trained and conditioned from a very young age for remote viewing, drug running, and other tasks. His mind control program is a continuation of the apparent Nazi super race projects. The intelligence community is creating genetically enhanced, programmable life form super soldiers and spies with psychic abilities under total mind control. The program, apparently called Project Mannequin, run by the NSA with the help from British intelligence. First-time guest in Coast to Coast, James Casbolt, who's been doing some work under his upcoming book, Agent Buried Alive. James, welcome to the program. How are you?
I'm good, George. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Tell me a little bit more about yourself before we get into this. This is fascinating.
Basically, I was involved in the Project Mannequin. That's a what's known as a super soldier project. It's mind control, drug-assisted hypnosis, and trauma-based mind control, which the NSA and British intelligence, they use trauma and torture to dissociate the mind and program it. And there's a lot of genetic enhancement and engineering that goes on in Project Mannequin, and microchipping. It's run by the NSA, British intelligence.
How long has that been going on, James, the program?
The project started in 1972. It's run from a secret base called the AL 499. And that's located in Peasmore, a small village of Peasmore, 200 feet below the village in Berkshire, in the United Kingdom. And that base is so secret that the local residents don't even know that it's there. It's basically a terrorist base, to be honest with you, George. The NSA and British intelligence involved in kidnapping children from around the country. And these children are programmed with mind control and genetically enhanced.
Is that what happened to you?
Yeah, it was, yeah. They're basically trained from young children in the kidnappings to the base. And, some children are even murdered there. In the training, there's the children have fights to the death with weapons, and the handlers of the program, and we've got some names of those people. Basically, they're some of the children are used in the genetic experimentation and are killed in that, and basically they're used in espionage when they become adults, and they're used as assassins and things like remote viewing and telepaths as well.
Are they kept in this underground facility from their childhood through adulthood?
No, basically you go for regular training and genetic enhancements. For me it was a couple of times a year as a kid, and then the rest of the time you're out in the community. I lived in London and Reading, in Berkshire. I grew up near the base, and but when the procedures take place in the base, afterwards your memories are wiped with drug-assisted hypnosis and hardware. So you're not actually aware that you're in the program when you're out in the normal community. And to give you a brief history of the project, it's a continuation of the Nazi super race projects. It goes back to Project Paperclip in 1945, when the British intelligence and the OSS, they brought thousands of the leading Nazi scientists in mind control and genetics to America and Britain to carry on their research. And a year later, in 1946, there was a British genetic bloodline study called Project Anvil. And that was basically looking for gifted psychic children who were rhesus negative blood type. And the NSA code name for these children, they're called digital children, because they actually linked up to the very powerful computers at the facility with a cranial implant that goes in the brain in front of the pineal gland. And the children can process huge amounts of information per second, and they're linked up to the computers and the hardware there for remote viewing and other roles.
You're almost like androids, I guess.
Basically, yeah. I think, a lot of the NSA and British intelligence projects, you can tell a lot by the name of them. They're often a play on words. So this is Project Mannequin. And in the 1950s, Project Anvil changed its name to Project Oak Tree. And that was actually run from Harwell Genetics Labs. That's in Oxfordshire. That's above ground building there.
Well, years ago, if I were to hear even a part of a story like this, I'd say, come on. But, I have realized that we've been experimented on, and we found these things out for ages and ages, tested. So it's very possible that places like this exist and things like this are going on. What about the parents of these children, James? I mean, did you have parents that did they know what was happening to you? Did they lose you? What happened?
Usually the parents are programmed themselves. My dad was a MI6 agent himself. He was involved in the international drug trafficking operations called Project Carrier Pigeon. So it was a lot of mind control is multi-generational.
And mother?
Basically, mother was, she wasn't really aware of what's going on because she was programmed herself. And when I was taken as a child, often it would be, it'd be for like 8 hours and things like that. So basically, the parents will always program themselves, because if they're not, they'll realise something's wrong.
So what has caused you to come forward with this information that we're going to talk about tonight, and why are you still alive and able to say this?
Basically, I've got a group of renegade NSA operatives that are helping me, and they've given me technology. They've also, I meet them regularly, and they help me with hypnosis to get my memories back. And a few months ago, it's decided that I had enough memories and enough of a coherent timeline of dates and facts and places to go public. So they're encouraging me, they're protecting me, and also the negative, evil factions in the NSA, British intelligence. If they were to kill me now, it would add I think it would add too much credibility to what I'm saying.
That's possible. Are you in hiding, James?
No, I'm not. I'm just in St Ives in Cornwall. They know where I am. I get a lot of harassment, things like that, but it's mostly psychological warfare tactics, and I think this is such a classified operation, such an important operation in this country, that, again, I'd say that if anything was to happen to me, it would add too much credibility to what I'm saying.
Oh, and maybe they figure the story is so incredible that they'll let you talk it and let people say, well, maybe we believe him, maybe we don't. Mm-hmm. But they figure it's better to let you talk than to try to quiet you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the book that's coming out, it's called Agent Buried Alive, there's a fair amount of evidence in there. There's photographs of some of the operatives that were involved in the project, names, addresses, there's plans of the base, there's statements from people that have worked there, security officer that I know, and, so I think there is a fair amount of evidence in the book. I suppose we can talk about some more, the Harwell Genetics Labs in Oxfordshire, because that's actually above ground. That's a place that a lot of people know in this country. That's in Oxfordshire.
Heavily guarded, no doubt.
I'm not sure. There's certain sensitive building areas there that you can't go in. But I'm pretty sure the public can visit one of the buildings, if I'm not mistaken.
What did they want to do, James, with you and some of the other children as they were genetically trying to enhance them and mind control, develop them? What was the goal?
Basically, in Project Oak Tree, that was run from Harwell Labs, and that was connected into all the major hospitals in this country, and they were trying to identify psychic children through their medical records. And they basically want a super soldier, genetically enhanced espionage agent with PSI abilities for remote viewing, and used as telepaths, used as psychics, increased strength, coordinations and things like that. At the Harwell Genetics Labs, there's the codename Alpha entrance, and that's an underground lab entrance there in one of the buildings. You go into one of the buildings, and there's a security desk with two armed security officers, and you go in, and there's a lift, and you go down 200 feet, and then there's security desk B underground, and that's usually got 4 armed security officers. And then there's a 2-lane road underground, and you actually go from Harwell Genetics Labs to the base underneath Peasmore. And
and no one above ground knows the difference.
No, because there's a lot of different bases around the UK, underground bases, and I suppose we can talk about them later, but they all link underground by a train system, and also there's a 2-lane underground road there. There's military vehicles going back and forth, so there's sort of quiet entrances above ground, but it's all happening underground. And the first memory for me of being part of the project was in the middle of 1981. Basically, I was driven to the what's codenamed the Bravo entrance, and that's the Greenham Common military base in Berkshire. I was basically driven there in a 40 Sierra, and there was 2 men in the front, and we drove up to the gate, and one of them turned around and said to me, "They keep nuclear weapons here." And I think that was actually a front, because there were protesters out there, I think it was in the 80s, outside Greenham Common, protesting about keeping nuclear weapons there. But I think that was a front because there was a classified mind control genetic enhancement project going on. So the gates open, we drove down in the car, and we drove down an underground tunnel, 2-lane road underground, and we got to an underground car park, and there was a military truck on the left, and they took me out the car, and there's a group of about 15 other children, and we were all given blankets because the tunnels are quite cold, and we were taken through a door on the right. The memories have always been sketchy for me of what actually happened that day, but an NSA guy's come, and we've gone through hypnosis, and we've got the details, and I've drawn the diagrams of what actually happened. The memories have always been sketchy for me of what I drove down in the car, and we drove down an underground tunnel, 2-lane road underground, and we got to an underground car park, and there was a military truck on the left, and they took me out the car, and there's a group of about 15 other children, and we were all given blankets because the tunnels are quite cold, and we were taken through a door on the right. The memories have always been sketchy for me of what actually happened that day, but an NSA guy's come and we've gone through hypnosis and we've got the details and I've drawn the diagrams of what actually happened.
How did you get away, James?
I wouldn't say I'm totally out of it. I went through 4 what they call military abductions last year, my labs. So, and I'm still chipped with the cranial implant. Deprogramming is a kind of lifelong endeavor. I'm not fully deprogrammed. I'm not fully out of it.
Are you trained to be an assassin?
Remote psychic assassin. Part of the conditioning in 1981 was involved around that. We were taken in a room on the right hand side through a door down a tunnel, and there was a kind of classroom set in there, tables and chairs, and we were given, we all sat down, we were given like geometrical shapes to put together, and we were all identified psychics from our bloodline records in the hospital through Project Oak Tree. But what they were doing there was trying to find out who was going to be used for different tasks. They were trying to identify who is more inclined towards remote viewing, who is more inclined towards physical activity like assassination, and being a telepath, because actually the people in the project send telepathic messages to each other.
Amazing.
And basically, after we identified who was going to be used for what, a woman came in, and the NSA operative, and some of the program is based around Masonic kind of ritual type activity, and this woman was she's called a mother goddess figure. It's usually some of the other people I've spoken to in the programs that survived them. They always say a lot of the program was a woman programming them. So this woman took us in to the next room, and we basically we played a game, some sort of game. I can't remember exactly what it was. The details aren't clear. It was possibly
a mind game, you mean?
It was like drawing picking straws, sort of similar game to that. And whoever drew the short one would something bad would happen to them. I vaguely remember it was something to do with coloured ribbons. Whoever picked a certain colour, and because my memories aren't totally clear on everything in the project, and basically the child that picked the certain colour, we were all taken to an area of cages where they were housing genetically modified animals, and this child was thrown in the cage with an attack dog, a large sort of attack dog or type wolf, and murdered in front of the rest of us.
So it is shock treatment?
Yeah, it was to traumatise the rest of us. And basically this was, it's actually called gauntlet training, and it was something that the Spartans did in ancient Greece, because these are like Masonic traditions that handed down the generations, and a lot of it comes from ancient Greece and back further.
So they traumatize everyone in by killing one in a brutal way, I guess.
Yeah, basically, and it's called gauntlet training, which is again connected to the ancient Spartans. That's what they used to do with their children. And after that, we were taken onto, it's called the MAP program, Memory Simulation Program. The security officer at the base called the TRIPSY. It's like a dentist chair, and you're strapped into it. There's a screen in front of you, and you're injected with drugs. And they use drug-assisted hypnosis to wipe your memories.
My gosh, stay with us, James. We're going to take this quick break. We'll be right back with you in this incredible story. Okay, welcome back to Coast to Coast. I'm George Norrie with James Casbolt. His website linked up at coasttocoastam.com. James, do you have a family? You've got a little girl, I understand, right?
Yeah, I've got a little 5-year-old daughter. Yeah.
How's she doing?
Basically, she's good. I mean, she's a beautiful little child, but she was born with a rare genetic disorder, directly from the genetic alteration I went through. It was called, the genetic disorder is called Golden Heart syndrome. And basically when she was born, the left side of her face was misshapen, so was her spine and hips, and also her legs and her feet. And she had holes in her heart, and she had to have open heart surgery when she was 1.5.
Oh my.
So, you know, but she's a beautiful little child. You know, she's very naturally psychic herself.
Would you believe that this disorder came about directly because of the manipulation with you, I guess, huh?
Oh, definitely, yeah. So, you know, I went through so many things over the years. You know, one of the sub-projects of Project Mannequin was called Project Lycan. And basically, the NSA were injecting us with modified animal DNA. And basically, my friend Barry King, he worked at the base as a security officer in 1979. He saw, he was called to a laboratory, I think it was on level 4 there, and there was a scene of a disturbance, emergency, and he went into the labs, and there was someone lying on the floor with blood on the floor. And basically he was, there was a large kind of wolf or dog that had escaped from one of the cages, and he said this thing was huge, naturally, unnaturally large.
Yeah.
And he said that this large wolf saw him and ran towards him, and he heard gunshots ring out, but then he blacked out. He don't remember what happened after that. And I actually saw a large snake in a cage, the facility there. This was, I would say, larger than anaconda. And
were these like mutant animals?
I think it's, again, it's a continuation of the Nazi super race projects, genetics, where they're genetically modifying animals and taking that modified animal DNA and injecting it into the super soldiers. So, you know, they need people from the right bloodlines, the group that can accept certain DNA and can have their DNA altered.
What were some of the things that were happening to the people, James, if you remember? I mean, were we finding 8-foot human beings down there or anything like that, like these animals?
Basically, there's these things in a facility called PGLFs or PLFs, programmable life forms, and they're a type of military biorobot. They're part machine and part organic, and they're referred to in the base as twitchers because they twitch naturally. And there's lots of different kinds. There's some of the ones are small grey, non-human beings, and they've got some kind of big black round eyes, and some of them have got 3 fingers and a thumb, and the others have got 4 fingers and a thumb.
Much like the Greys that we've heard so much about, these ETs?
Well, I mean, that's another subject all in itself. There are extraterrestrial life forms in this base and other bases. We can talk about that later.
Okay.
But, basically, these are military biorobots. They're not aliens, but there are real aliens. The NSA is a fact. You know, the NSA and the higher levels of British intelligence are interacting in the bases with extraterrestrial life forms.
What did they do, though, with these bio-robots? Did they take a human being and add machinery to him?
Basically, with the PLFs, they're developed in 3 stages. Each stage takes 3 months in between, and each stage has its own section in the base, and there's up to 500 PLFs stored at one time in the base, and they're shipped to different military bases in the UK and abroad. And contacting the intelligence community tells me there's thousands of PLFs at Area 51 in Nevada. But I mean, what they do, the NSA actually stage false flag alien abductions with them.
Now explain that. What do you mean by that?
Well, what they do is they basically, the NSA are involved in what's called military abductions, MILABs, and they're using these PLS military robots to make people be under the impression that they're being abducted by extraterrestrials.
Ah, okay.
And what they're trying to do is confuse the public about the extraterrestrial agenda and throw in all sorts of disinformation and try and control the outcome.
What do these PLF super soldiers look like, James? I mean, if we were looking at one right now, can you describe one?
There's all different types. They're not human. The small grey ones are about 3.5 foot tall. Kind of big black eyes. Their eyes are round in the way you can describe them. The real greys have got those sort of wraparound V-like eyes.
Right.
But the PLS have got just like round eyes or black eyes, and they're kind of spongy to the touch. I haven't actually touched them myself, but my friend Barry King, who's a security officer who worked at the base, has.
And they don't have any kind of human DNA at all in them?
They're part organic, part machine. I'm not sure exactly what their DNA consists of. I mean, you don't have to feed them. You can program them for tasks on a computer.
Where did they come from? Were they developed?
But yeah, that was back-engineered alien technology. They were developed from the PLS. It gets back to the treaties that the US government did with extraterrestrials. I mean, the first one was on July the 11th in 1934, and that was with the Zeton Greys, the small greys, 3.5 foot greys. They're actually from the Orion star system, and they made a treaty with the US government, and that was actually on a naval ship in the port city of Balboa in Panama, and that was on July the 11th, 1934, as I said. That was actually one of the most historic events in history.
What kind of a deal was this?
Basically, there was an exchange that the Greys provided them representatives of the US intelligence community with advanced alien technology, and in return the US government said they would allow the Greys to proceed unhindered with the abductions of human beings. Basically, the Greys' attitude was, we'll give you technology if you allow us to infiltrate your culture. And when they were infiltrating the culture, that was basically replacing targeted humans in abductions with clones under Grey mind control. And that was, like political leaders, military leaders. The Greys are subverting the human population slowly. Because basically, there's good and bad factions of the Zeton Greys, but the negative ones is an invasion, a planetary takeover. And
you're saying, though, that since 1934, James, they have been systematically removing humans from this planet, replacing them with like humans, but they're not.
Basically clones. That gets into the PLF super soldiers. The PLF super soldiers are human clones, and it takes 1 year to grow them from embryo to adult, but you couldn't tell them apart. They just look human, and they're basically, the NSA create them in the base, the AO499 in Peasmore in Berkshire, and in many other bases at Dulce, Area 51, the clones are basically loaded with mind control implants and genetic enhancement. And in Project Mannequin, a thing called reverse cloning takes place. Reverse cloning is quite complicated, but basically, you're put in a trip seat, and you've got the cranial implant, which is in front of the pineal gland in the brain, and that's connected to the computers. It's called, through EBL. It's called electronic brain link. And
is there a plug in their head, or
no, it's not. It just uses radio waves, scalar waves. So there is no plug. Basically, the supercomputers in the NSA base, they're again back engineered alien technology, so they can actually decode brain waves. So what they do is they download all your memories and all your emotions onto the computer and record it onto the computer. And what they do is they take a clone of you that's taken a year to grow, and they download all the memories and all your emotions into the clone, and then they kill the original person and send the clone out into the community.
Gee.
And the clone thinks it's the original person.
How many of them are out there now?
Everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people in Project Mannequin go through these procedures. Basically, myself and the other children, we've gone through these procedures more than once in our lifetimes. And that's because the clone bodies take, they age very fast. So they need to be replaced every few years. So basically, and then the clone body has got all these abilities. They're basically the PLS super soldiers. It connects to the Lycan program, which is a sub-project of Mannequin, where the clone bodies are injected and infused with this modified animal DNA. And there's also a program called Tigris, which my code name in Project Mannequin is White Tiger. And in that program, they're taking modified animal DNA from a white tiger, because that's supposedly the strongest tiger, and infusing it into the clone bodies to basically, your reactions are very fast. You can run really fast. My punching power, my kicking power, and speed is unusually, is extremely advanced. And basically,
can you leap tall buildings at a single bound or anything? Is it that unusual?
I wouldn't say that, but I'd say, my kicking power and speed is unusual. I do want to get it tested at some point.
And you still have the implant in you?
Yeah, the cranial implant.
Do they control that? Can they control that?
Yeah, basically. They can, they can activate me for tasks on that through the cranial implant.
Have they done that, or would you even know if they did?
Yeah, they've done it in the past. Some very strange things have happened over the years. My vision's been altered, but I can tune my eyes in like a digital camera. I can actually see radio waves, scalar waves, and that's part of the programming. Basically, they want all the people, the children, the group of children I was programmed with. We were all connected up psychically, telepathically through the cranial implants. And part of my job was to, when I was in the base, was to send them telepathic messages where they'd be in different parts of this country or in other countries to activate them to do tasks like that.
Do you still do that?
The controllers of the program, actually control that ability. And basically, they'd have me in a trip seat on the base, and what they do is they instruct me to give a telepathic signal, and that would actually, because the cranial implants are linked up to the computer, that would be actually carried on radio wave and bounced off satellite. And actually, the other people who I program with would accept that, but it had to be, the programming commands had to be from another member of your genetic group. The NSA couldn't just send a message on a computer, or they couldn't just get one of the NSA officers to come in and send the message. It had to be from one of the psychics in the same genetic group.
It's almost like a relay station, huh?
Yeah, because basically on a psychic level, we all trust each other, we're all genetically connected. So we accept, if we receive messages from each other, we trust each other, we act on those messages, and we can tell when a message is coming from a computer and when it's coming from one of our genetic group.
Is that your way to fight back?
Well, it's a matter of being deprogrammed. That takes a lot of effort, really.
What if the deprogramming, James, for you and others is not successful? I mean, what happens to you?
Well, they've spent so much, the NSA has spent so much money on me, time and effort, that they plan to use me in the future. I've got a sleeping program called Janus. That's actually the two-headed Roman god of change. And that program kicks in when New World Order events start to happen.
Well, we know they're happening now, don't we?
Yeah, but I'm talking about things like martial law in America and biowarfare attacks in this country and things like that. Basically, when that happens, they want the PLF super soldiers to be used in crowd pacification if there's rioting on the street.
Do they ever send them into combat, like Iraq or something like that?
This is more psychic espionage. I mean, I think they are, from what one of my friends says. He was an ex-mercenary soldier. He says that they're using these clones in Iraq. Companies, I think it's Blackwater, is using them. But this, our group, we were basically used for psychic espionage, more political in this country. I mean, to give you an example of that, George, in 1994, I was at a base called the CLC-1 base.
Yes.
That stands for Central London Complex, and it's also called the Compartmented Learning Centre, and that's underneath Westminster in London. And a remote viewing project was being run from there, and that was called the Tomorrow People.
Hey, James, stay with us. We're at the top of the hour. We'll be back in just a second on Coast to Coast AM. Well, does this sound like the island of Dr. Moreau? Could be. Back with James Casbolt in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. James, I want to get into Project Mannequin in a big way this hour, but how did they, through their remote viewing with assassins, how they try to kill people?
Okay, basically you asked about what my enhanced abilities were. That focuses on remote viewing and remote assassinations, called remote influencing. To go into the nitty-gritty of that, in 1994, I travelled up from Cornwall to London. I was taken in the CLC-1 facility underneath Westminster. Was given the primary drug, scopolamine, which is a mind control drug. Basically, that drug is like you turned into a robot and do exactly the commands that you're given.
While you're under that influence, I guess.
Yeah, scopolamine is called. It's a military drug, NSA developed drug. Secondary drug was given diethanol C, another military drug. That's a PSI, psychic booster. So, basically, again, strapped into the trip seat, the EBL connection was activated, the electronic brain link from the cranial implant to the computers. there's actually, for remote viewing and remote influencing, psychic assassinations, there's a headset that you wear. It's like a helmet, with a visor in front, and headphones, which actually they pump, the technicians pump enhanced brainwave frequencies through to boost up your psychic ability. And when you're actually doing the remote viewing, you're given instructions through the headset. There's a lab at the back of the trip seat. There's two technicians that sit in the lab in front of the computers. So basically, the technicians give what's called a vector intention, and that is there's 3 screens in front of you on the trip seat, and they're holographic screens. Again, all this is back engineered extraterrestrial technology. The vector intention is almost like a coordinates on a map, where the satellite homes in on the location that you're meant to be remote viewing. And you know, it can home in very much detail, you know, almost like a laser. And basically, then what happens is a lot of occult symbolism is used for remote viewing. In my case, it was the Kabbalah was put on the holographic screen in front of me, the Tree of Life, and in the top circle there was a spinning geometrical shape. Now, what happens there is you're interfacing with very powerful computers, so your consciousness is becoming one with the computer systems around the world in the NSA bases and the satellite systems. So you actually feel like your consciousness, you feel like you're being absorbed into the screen once you look at the spinning geometrical shape in the top circle. And once you feel like you're really close to the screen, they electroshock the seat, and you feel like you fly really fast through the screen, and the next thing you know, you're having a fully interactive RV experience, remote viewing experience, where you're at a location and you're seeing it, and you know, you're seeing it like I'm standing here looking out the window, and you can hear it and you can see it really clearly. And the more relaxed you are, the more interactive the experience becomes. And the technology is that advanced is the NSA handlers, the Project Mannequin, they can watch what you're seeing on the screen in front of them, because the computer decodes your brainwaves from the cranial implant and decodes it into a visual picture, so they can see what you're seeing on the screen and they can record it.
That's riveting.
So basically, the RV locations I did over the years in the 90s, I was RVing other underground facilities around the world. Possibly some of them were in Russia. I can't remember the exact details, and I wasn't exactly told exactly where I was going. They were just using me like a probe. There was also remote viewing the scenes of military conflict, and also they used a lot of remote viewers for remote viewing off-planet, believe it or not. Basically, the NSA has got space weaponized with hardware and satellites from here to at least Mars. So, probably a lot further.
Black Ops programs, no doubt.
Yeah, basically. So with their satellites positioned in space, and as I say, the NSA have got satellites and hardware from here to at least Mars. Your consciousness can link to those satellites, so you can remote view off-planet. In one remote viewing RV session in the 90s was actually another planet, which was like a water world. It was, you know, I was remote viewing in the outer atmosphere a bit. Most of the landmass was underwater, but there was 3 main pieces of landmass, and in each one there was like it looked like a city of light, a huge city with lots of lights in the middle of each landmass of the 3, and the rest of the landmass was dark. Possibly that was in the Sirius star sector. Sirius star system.
Yeah, sure is, which is where the Dogon tribe believes that we may have been visited from.
That's
yeah,
fine. Yeah.
possibly by a reptilian race from there. But I don't know for sure that was in the Sirius star system. I just believe it was. And again, the remote influencing, which is psychic assassinations, remote assassinations, that is when you're not just watching, but you're influencing the target with enhanced brainwaves. So the NSA is basically, again, using you. You're like a extension of a computerized weapon system.
But if, let's say, though, James, they wanted you to do in someone, you would remote view to that person, but how would the person actually die? Would he have a heart attack? What would happen to him?
Yeah, it was... I'd just like to say, before I start talking about remote assassinations, the children that I was programmed with, the group, they were like what's known as star children, indigo children. These are like naturally psychic children. They're
Right.
basically beautiful children, really beautiful spirits, because the PSI abilities come from your ability to be empathic. So they're really naturally loving, beautiful children. But they were turned and changed. And basically, when you're injected with these drugs, you're under total mind control, plus you're and with the cranial implant, and you're an extension of a weaponized computer system. So you're not really killing these people yourself. You know,
You're just the vehicle.
Yeah, they're using you like a probe.
Yeah.
Basically, the NSA is using your consciousness to send electromagnetic radio waves through, and you can actually give people heart attacks, and it is pumped through satellite, from the computers, through your consciousness.
Did you ever try to enter somebody's dream state and kill them?
I don't remember doing that.
Okay.
Basically, my experience of psychic assassinations was we could affect the chakra system of the person and give them heart attacks or strokes or panic attacks. Basically, to give you the details of it, again, strapped in the trip seat, your extension of the computerized weapon system, and when you RV in, the vision is slightly different. You can see people's auras, and you can see the electromagnetic energy in the environment, and you can see people's chakras. You can physically see them. So what you do is you look at the chakras, or the handlers look at the chakras through their screen, and they identify which is their weak chakra. Is it in the chest? Is it in the head? Is it in the stomach? And they identify the weak chakra, and that one is targeted. The scalar electromagnetic frequencies come through the satellite, through your consciousness, and attack the person's chakra.
Are you at liberty, James, to tell us who might have been assassinated with this project?
I don't know his name, but I remember following a guy onto a London bus in 1994. He was in a suit, and the middle green chakra was attacked, and the guy had a heart attack on the bus. Again, I don't know his identity.
Was he someone they really wanted removed, or was he someone they just wanted you to test on?
No, I got the impression he was a high-level political target or involved in the intelligence community. Yeah, I was involved. I got the impression he was, definitely. You can just tell people by their body language, the way they walk, the way they dress, if they're involved in this, intelligence apparatus.
Is this project still underway?
Yeah, it's still going strong. Yeah, children are still being kidnapped as we speak, taken in there and going through all the things I went through.
Are the children brought back to their parents ever, or do they keep them now?
No, they bring them back afterwards before anyone gets too suspicious. But they
Well, how long do they hold them?
Well, you can be in there days, you can be in there 3 hours.
Did they make contact with the parents and say, hey, your kid's okay, we can't tell you who we are?
No, because most of the NSA are connected into everything in British intelligence. They're connected to the hospitals, the schools, for instance, to give you a bit of detail, the group that I was programmed with, we were known by the NSA as Digital Children.
Right.
Another code name is Platinum Blues.
And how many of you were there?
There was the group I was programmed with. There's 15 of us in 1981.
All right.
The group, and one of us was killed in front of the others. That left about 14.
By that big wolf or whatever it was.
Yeah, or the attack dog. But the overall group of our group, it was about 70 or 80 children. And basically, in our group, we were codenamed Platinum Blues. That's actually the official code name, Platinum Blues. We're actually descendants of Royal European bloodlines. My family goes back to the French royal family of the French Revolution. On my father's side, we've got a coat of arms that's handed through the generations to the eldest son in that family. And the bloodline element in this is very important because these Royal European bloodlines, or their descendants, they've got high levels of psychic ability, natural psychic ability. There was generations of PSI, psychic ability, being practiced in these bloodlines in rituals and rites that relate to Freemasonry.
And what's the objective here, James? I don't think it's to use these super soldiers in a war or a battle. There's a bigger plan somewhere, I think.
Well, yeah. I mean, to understand the future of what's going to happen, these super soldiers are being kept on ice for when it really hits the fan in the future and there's mass chaos in the world.
And they pulled them out.
Then we've been used for different things in the past, but we were still on ice, so to speak. Our real programming, our real tasks that are yet to come. But I mean, to understand the futures, I believe it's important to get a history of where we've come from and the connection to these bloodlines. These bloodlines, because their descendants have practiced these rituals, these PSI rituals in that ancient Freemasonry, it's in your genetic memory to be naturally psychic, even if you haven't practiced psychic abilities yourself. And in our group, we are actually descendants of the tribe of Dan, one of the 12 tribes of Israel. It's the lost tribe of Israel. Basically, they are Mother Moon goddess worshippers, and this connects into Freemasonry, the Illuminati. The Mother Moon goddess was known as Astartes or Diana. There's also another name I won't say, because I believe that's a very negative aspect of her, and I believe there's strong sound vibrations with names, so I don't want to use that name. But basically the tribe of Dan, they were a super advanced race of warriors and sorcerers. And when I say sorcerers, I mean they had the ability to harness and control electromagnetic energy. And they come from ancient Atlantis. When ancient Atlantis sunk approximately 10,000 years ago, the tribe of Dan came to the Middle East because there was Atlantean colonies in the Middle East at the time. And then at the time of the Exodus, the tribe of Dan left the Middle East and they went up to Greece, and they were known as the Spartans there in Sparta. And again, the Spartans, if you've seen the new film 300.
300, I've seen that.
The Spartans did all the things that is being done to the kids in Project Mannequin. Trauma-based conditioning. They'd fight each other to the death with weapons as children. And they'd fight with wild animals. And if you were born with a genetic disorder or some deformity, you were left, on a hill to die as a baby. But there was basically when the Spartans actually left Greece because they were traveling from country to country, they went up to France, and other places in Europe. They were actually known as the Merovingians in France, the Merovingian kings there. and they were other royal French bloodlines. And the Merovingians, they were known as the long-haired sorcerer kings. Again, they were master warriors, and they could harness electromagnetic energy. The Merovingians, they would have fights to the death over land and other things. They would fight each other to the death in the Pont de la Alma tunnel in Paris, the underground tunnel. And they actually built that tunnel, the Merovingians.
So this has been going on for a long time.
Well, since 26,000 years ago. That's when this race first appeared on the scene, a tribe of Dan. But I mean, the Pont de la Alma tunnel in Paris, that's where Princess Diana died.
Right, that's right.
And she was of Merovingian descent as well.
Huh. All right, when you were doing this, and they were, do you remember a doctor or anybody like that was involved in this project?
Yeah, there was a lot of doctors, scientist types there. I mean, I got the names of some of them. There's photographs of some of them in my new book.
How did you get these photographs?
They were given to me by Barry King. Gave me the photographs of one of the guys, and
Barry King being a former NSA person, right?
yeah, he was the security guard at the base at the AL499 in 1979.
Still alive?
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. I just like to say Barry's not very well at the moment. He's suffering with health problems because of the what was done to him at the base. So if everyone listening could say a little prayer for him to help him get well, that'd be much appreciated, because he's got
how old is he now, James?
How old is he?
He's got to be way up there in age, I bet.
Yeah, he's about 56.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a photograph of us together in my new book.
56 is not that old. I'm 57.
No, he's not that old, no.
He's just a young puppy.
Yeah, but he's, like I say, he's not very well at the moment. So if you listen to this, Barry, I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you soon. But yeah, there's a photograph of Barry and I together in the book, and Barry comes down here to Cornwall, and we go through deprogramming, help me get my memories back. And, he's really helped me. It was Barry who provided some of the photographs of these people. The head of the project, the former head of the project, was a man called Mr. Whitemore. I've got a photograph of him. That'll be in the new book. And the book will be available through my website in the new year.
All right, we're going to have you give that out in just a second, James. Okay. We'll be back. I'll tell you what, next hour we'll open up the phone lines. You can chat with James Casbolt about this absolutely stunning story you are hearing. And we'll be back with him and more on Coast to Coast AM. One of our regular guests, James, several years ago had a heart attack. He was in apparent good health, but he was controversial, still is. Is it possible somebody zoned in on him and did this to him?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. What we found as remote viewers there was that some people had, like, how can I describe it, special aura. They were like spiritually pure, and they couldn't be harmed. It was like firing
well, like a force field around them, I guess.
Yeah, it was like kind of firing BB pellets at a tank or something. Whatever you did to them, you would just bounce off them, and it wouldn't matter how much the NSA turned up the satellite frequencies, it just couldn't do anything. So and other people had weak chakra systems. A lot of the training that I did in the base was, and the other people, it was like advanced Tai Chi and yoga and meditation. We do Tai Chi and yoga postures, but we'd have, it was like a little black box connected to our belts. It was that flash with a green light. And I think that was back in engineered alien technology, because that enhanced our brain waves while we were training. And I also saw Super Soldier training, like sparring match between these two huge guys. combat pants and they had no tops on. You know, these like bigger than Mike Tyson,
Yeah.
two white guys. And one of the guys kind of did a double leg takedown, picked the other guy up and slammed him on the floor. And the guy on the bottom bit a huge chunk out of his shoulder,
Jeez.
out of his flesh. And then the fight was stopped. So, you know, it's just totally pumped up on all these drugs and all these genetic enhancements, really.
Is it the drugs that did a lot of this to them and to you?
Yeah, I think the project relies more on natural psychic abilities and more on genetic enhancements than the drugs. The drugs are just when you're in an RV operation or whatever, you're given those to enhance your PSI ability. But, you know, I think they're relying on the clone, building the clones of the PLS super soldiers. That's actually, they'd be very powerful in every way, physically, psychically, mentally, without drugs.
Tell me about these underground bases, James. What do they look like? How big were they?
The AL499 is about 6 levels. I'm not 100% sure exactly how big it is. I mean, a lot of my memories are very hazy still.
But I would assume people live down there?
I don't know if people live at the AL499. I think, like Barry, he went to work and he drove to the Greenham Common entrance and the Harwell Genetics Labs, parked his car, and then went down the list and worked there, worked his shift, then went home. You know, that's usually how the workers work. And the people that are kidnapped and taken to the base for RV sessions and things like that, they stay there for a number of hours. And then they're put on the trip seat afterwards. A false cover memory is put in. For example, when I went up to London, I'd be in the CLC1 facility for, say, 5 hours on a Saturday. And then when I'd finished, they'd put me on the trip seat and they'd install a cover memory in that I'd been out shopping all day. And then I'd go back and I'd come back to St Ives, like this was in the mid-90s, and I'd be walking along the streets with my friends, and I'd have a massive panic attack and throw up in the street.
Jeez.
And my friends would say, you know, what the hell is wrong with you? You know, there's something wrong with you. And I'd say, I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with me. So I couldn't remember properly. And it was only in the last few years when I started to get my memories back fully that I've been able to piece it all together. But I don't know exactly how big the AL499 base is. There's diagrams of the base and exactly how big it is in the book. But I just remember certain corridors and certain labs and the layouts of it and the programming that I went through.
We touched a little bit on the extraterrestrial relationship with this planet. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, basically, it's I suppose it's best to give the history of the US government and the extraterrestrial treaties. We talked about the July the 11th, 1934 one. Again, the Greys provided the US government with anti-gravity technology and metals and alloys, environment technology, where they developed HARP from, and medical nanotechnology. But we're not seeing any of that in the public domain. There's no cures for cancer, which they've got, and their nanotechnology. They're just using it for like biowarfare and things like that. It was either the second or the third treaty. That was on May 1954. That was called the Greada Treaty. Again, that was between the Seaton Greys and the Eisenhower administration, the US government. That treaty took place under the Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, in the underground base underneath there. An NSA unit called Ultra were involved in that treaty.
Right.
And they were actually Nazis, a Nazi unit that was brought over in Project Paperclip in 1945. They were the clones, PLS super soldiers unit, the Nazis. Basically, the original documents and the original hardware from the Greada Treaty that is actually at a facility called Blue Moon, an underground facility. That's underneath Kirkland Air Force Base in New Mexico. And that's the technical headquarters for the Department of Energy. The Department of Energy are developing crafts called, or have developed crafts called the Firefly, or TR3. They're black triangle discs, NSA craft.
Reverse engineered?
Yeah, they're basically black triangle anti-gravity craft. The NSA use them for abducting civilians to underground bases, and they have a rotating electromagnetic field around them, so they can cloak themselves, invisible to the naked eye. They're completely silent, so they're very stealthy craft. They look like stealth. They're quite small, and they basically small special forces units ride in them, fly in them. But basically, to carry on with the treaties, from what this NSA technology was developed, April 15th in 1964, Project Plato it was called, two NSA operatives, again these guys were probably PLF super soldiers, they met the Zetans, the Zetan Greys in the New Mexico desert, and that was to arrange a meeting a few days later on April the 25th, again at the underground base underneath Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. Basically the treaties are broken down at this point because the Zetan Greys have abducted a lot more people than it was originally agreed upon, and that was more of a psychological bid in order to buy time to deal with the problem, because actually the NSA have realised, and again I've got friends in the NSA who are helping me, good friends, some of them are Illuminati above the 33rd degree of Zion.
Are they at risk here? Why are they doing this?
Because there's a lot of good people in the NSA, there's good Illuminati people. I know, like, kind of conspiracy theorists say, oh, you know, all the Illuminati's bad, all Freemasons are bad, but it's not the fact that doesn't play out in my experience. There's a lot of good Illuminati people, there's a lot of good Freemasons, a lot of good NSA people, British intelligence people, you know, and they want to see, they don't want to see children kidnapped and murdered and programmed, you know, so they're helping me, basically, but they know that the Zetan Greys are actually the front men, or actually the little slave drone workers for a reptilian race called the Draco Prime.
Well, we've heard of this race too, and some believe that they live beneath the planet here, beneath the surface.
Well, that they've been, because in the military bases, the underground bases at Holloman, Dulce, the Peasmore, AL499, the CLC-1, there's actually ancient underground bases even further below those, and the modern military bases are built on top of those, and they're extraterrestrial bases that have been there probably hundreds of thousands of years. And that there's actually a nest, a Graham reptilian ancient base underneath Parliament in London. The CLC-1 connects to that. Now these bases have been there for a long time, and some of them, the Draco Prime, the reptilian, so the reptilians are housed in those bases, and I think originally they're from, the Draco Prime are from the planet Typhon in the Draconis star sector. And they've been coming back and forth from there to this planet for a long, long time.
Do they hurt people?
There's good and bad ones in the Draco Prime. Actually, reptilian warriors. They're awesome species. They're the group leaders of the Greys. The bad ones are omnivores. They move across planets, taking the resources, and they're meat eaters. They harvest the lymphatic systems, and they use people for food, the bad ones. Basically the Draco Prime, they've got two hearts. They're between about 7 and 12 feet tall plus, and they've got the strength of over 10 men, and this is coming directly from the horse's mouth, from NSA Illuminati people I'm friends with that have seen these beings in bases. And they've got they use a lot of holographic and mind control genetic technology. Some of them can shapeshift into humans, and they're very ritualistic. They're almost super religious. And many have evolved down a total technical path, and they've got no emotional bodies. They're like biorobots. And the leaders are the royal caste, have got white skin. They're the Draco Prime. It's a caste system with the Draco based on skin colour. Now, some of them have been reported as wearing a kind of armour, and others have been reported wearing military uniforms, type of military uniforms, a strange insignia. And some actually talk English, but with a digital computerized voice.
That would be strange to see a Draco speaking English.
Yeah, with a kind of digital computerized voice.
Yeah.
That's what people said. They,
Like he's programmed.
Yeah, like he's a robot. And again, this is coming straight from NSA people that have worked in these facilities, actually spoken to these beings.
You know what I have found, James, to be the most frightening thing, though, you've said tonight, is the fact that they're replacing humans with these clones.
Well, that's ultimately a Draco tactic. That's how they covertly take over planets and then harvest the planets for the resources. Basically, you've got, they're subverting the human population. They're subverting the intelligence, the military and political apparatus by replacing the leaders with the clones under their control. And that's how they want to take over the planet, the negative factions. I've got a vague memory when I was 15 years old in the base of being on a table, and there was a Draco Prime, a white one, on the side, and there was like a toolkit laid out with surgical instruments. But that's all I remember about that. The Draco and some Pleiadian reptilian groups have actually genetically created the Platinum Blues, the tribe of Dan, and the other blue blood bloodlines. They actually created them in underground bases at the time of Atlantis.
Do you believe that there's some people on this planet now who are genetically offspring to these Dracos?
Yeah, the tribe of Dan, our group, we're hybrids. Basically, they created those descendants of the tribe of Dan and other blue bloodlines. The Draco did in underground base at the time of Atlantis, and that was about 26,000 years ago, and that was after the last pole shift. To give you the hybrid situation is very interesting because last year I was sitting around my friend's house and we were talking where he got quite emotional, and he said that he saw my face shapeshift. He said he saw my face elongate and change colour to dark red, and he said he actually saw my ears go pointy. And I felt the same, but I felt like this energy go up my spine when it happened. And he was totally terrified. But I don't know what happened. I didn't have any control over it. And somebody else has said they see my eyes shift into vertical slits for pupils.
Now, if that's the case, you're some kind of reptilian. You don't even know it.
Yeah, well, I've got no control over this. Basically, I've got another friend who was an NSA assassin, and he was actually a security officer at the Area 51 as well. Now, something happened to his daughter, and he got very emotional. This stuff seems to happen under intense emotions, these genetic changes. He got very upset with what happened to his daughter, and he's with his wife, and his wife told me that she saw hair grow out of his back.
Like a werewolf would?
Yeah, and then go back in. And this connects possibly to the lichen and tigress programs where they're injecting modified animal DNA into us. The word lichen is actually an occult, like Masonic word for a shapeshifter.
How many soldiers or doctors are behind this program?
There's quite a few. They're the ones that are continuation of the Nazi super race projects with doing all this genetic modification. I mean, I've got another friend, his name's Duncan O'Finian. He's released his story. His story is very similar to mine. His, people have seen him shapeshift, and he's actually grown taller and more muscular. He's grown by about 3 feet and grown more muscular.
What is he, like 8 or 9 feet tall?
I think
When this happens?
I think he's about 5'8" normally, and he's grown to about 6'2" and more muscular,
Jeez.
and then gone back down again. And people have actually witnessed him doing this, and it seems, but we can't seem to control these abilities. They come out at times of stress. And then I've got another friend, Richard. He lives up in Kent. He was possibly involved in the Super Soldier projects himself. Now, he's just been mixing with some CIA and NSA people in the States. Now, there was a major there who he was with. He said he was out walking with him one day, and he said he saw vertical reptilian slits behind his pupils as if he was wearing contact lenses. And then there was another guy who opened his mouth and showed him the inside of his mouth, and there was a human tongue, but there was like a snake tongue at the back.
Like it was split?
Well, there's a human tongue, but then there was a snake tongue on top of the human tongue. And then there was another guy who said, who I think he was a CIA bloke, who was friends with Richard. Him and Richard had an argument, and the guy got really angry and walked around the side of a building away from Richard. And Richard said he made this noise like the alien of Predator in the film Predator when he's hurt. And this really scared Richard when he made this noise. And again, the Draco Prime can shapeshift from reptilian to human. So possibly they were Draco Prime and they could control their ability to shapeshift at will.
James, stay with us. So we're going to take this break, and then we're going to come back for phone calls as well. His website's linked up at coasttocoastam.com. It's James Casbolt, CASBOLT.com. That's all one word, jamescasbolt.com. And we'll be back to take your calls in a moment on Coast to Coast AM.